Hello, welcome to our tutorial on our Garmin Connect integration. What you're looking at here is the screen that you'll be prompted with when you first run our mobile app and you haven't connected Garmin. So let's first back up a little bit and just describe what this feature is all about and why is it important. So, just like Strava does, we wanted to have a direct relationship with Garmin so that we could directly receive your workout files from them because they have quite a bit more information than what we can get access through the Strava API for. All right, so basically, if you authorize us, we receive the file, right around the same time that Strava would receive your file, and we process it. And when the Strava activity gets pushed to us through their push integration, then we link the two together, and essentially we take the summary information from Strava, and then we take the time series data, which is really what's so important to strive.ai, all the variables that are within the file. We store those, so that we can do simple things like calculate your thresholds, and then more advanced things with factors that can say what are attributing or what's impacting your thresholds, right? So there's just basically quite a bit more information in the Garmin files. In addition to the time series data, we also now get information about your sensors. Many sensors even tell us what battery level there are. And so, we just have a whole backlog of things that we're going to provide for you that enhance your experience through strive.ai. And make it more intimate with your devices and what you're doing with them. So let's just quickly summarize how you do it. You'll be prompted with this screen. Gives you three options. You can either connect, which essentially takes you to a web page over in Garmin Connect where you're prompted to enter your credentials and then prompted to authorize strive.ai. If you do that, then it sends a token back to us, and you reopen our app in the flow, and then it saves your token so that we can successfully receive your files once they start getting shipped to us. We give you three options of where to store them, all of which are encrypted and in our cloud. If you live in the European Union, you store the information there. If you live in the United States, you can store it here. If you live in Canada, you can store it in Canada. Those are the three options we have right now. We may add more as data privacy things change down the road. But if you decline, it just simply means you're not interested in doing this integration, and you don't want to be prompted for it again. And then later, it just says, hey, I know you want me to do this, but I'll return to this screen when I'm ready to do it, right? So I'm not going to walk through the flow, but if you do want to get back to that screen, it's just on the More page, Garmin Connect, right? So let's talk about some of the benefits. The biggest thing is it's just a much more extensible way for strive.ai to be on the leading edge of new sensors and more information that gets included in your workout files, right? So a perfect example is we have an athlete in Northern California this year who's testing the Moxy muscle oxygen sensors, and they store their information in the Garmin Fit files through an IQ app, which our hope is that we'll be able to easily integrate that into our analytics to let people who use Moxy know, is muscle oxygen making a material impact on your performance, right? Does it allow you to generate more power? Does it indicate when you're actually going to, lose the ability to generate power, and so on and so forth? That's just one example. There are many, if you think about it, the main audience that was impacted by, this is really the runners, right? So, there's a whole host of information, especially if you use a device like the Stride FootPod, or you use, Garmin Watch. There's a bunch of variables for running dynamics, like your ground contact time, your vertical oscillation, and obviously Stride has your run power, your form power, a bunch of other variables. Those just weren't accessible to our platform until we did this, right? So big win for runners. and it's very extensible for the future. The other bonus is the sensor information I mentioned. We can do much more tight integration about, what device were you using, so we can predict which bike you were using. The sensors don't lie is my new my new tagline, right? We used to use telemetry data for predicting which bike you were on, and that wasn't very successful. The sensor information is much more accurate. My predictions are at 100%, right? When it trains and tests the algorithm, it's spot on every time. So, essentially what we do there is we look at the last 5 examples of every bike you have that you've said you've used in Strava and what sensors were on that bike, and that's how we can predict which bike you were using much more accurately. And so we'll also have some other things about the sensor information, with the battery and, how things are, do we see anomalies because the battery gets to a certain level? You can imagine the amount of data science we could do to the sensor data. And then, we have this thing called models, right, which I'll show you quickly here. If you've authorized Garmin Connect, I'll show you a perfect example. Let's say my 1-minute bike power. This thing up here is essentially our factors view, right? Which hopefully most of you know what factors are. These are the time series variables that are available through the Strava interface. And then so essentially if you click right here, I get another one because I use a Cork power meter on my bikes. I have a model called left-right bike power, which basically incorporates those variables that the Cork power meter generates into the same analytics, right? So I can now see, okay, how are some of these other variables like left-right balance impacting my 1-minute power? Looks like it's the higher the number, the more favorable it is, right? So closer to 100%, or 50-50, the better. This is the extensibility part. Once we get the muscle oxygen thing working, there'll be a Moxie model. For the runners, there's a Stride model that's in production right now, and then a running dynamics model that's in production. So you get access to those, and that's the summary of Garmin Connect. Thanks for listening.